Shoot straight, you bastards! Don't make a mess of it! Fire!
G'day, Jimmy.
Yeah, g'day, Pano.
Got a bit of work if you want it.
Yeah, all right.
For almost half a century, Bryan Brown has graced our large and small screens in an acting career that has taken him around the world, but which at its heart has been built on a presence that has helped define the archetypal Australian of his times.
So good afternoon. My name is Bryan Brown and I'm a Westie.
Brown came to Canberra today to address the National Press Club with stories of a career that has wound through a golden age for the Australian film and television industry and on to the international screen.
On flying to Rwanda, I asked who the actors would be wearing the monkey suits. Oh no, I was informed. We'll be shooting with the real gorillas. Cool. More authentic, I agree. Next, we were told to accompany the guard into the jungle. Just 4 of us. Sigourney, myself, focus puller and camera operator, and a researcher with a pad and a pencil. I looked at the researcher and I said, what about the bloke with the gun? Will he be coming with us? And I was told, no, it wasn't allowed. Just the 5 of us with a pencil. As our only weapon. Wasn't all that keen on authenticity at that point.
Act submissive. I've never been so submissive in my life.
But Brown was also there today as an ambassador for Australian screen producers to deliver a message which went to a currently lively policy debate about what government policy needs to do to ensure we continue to see ourselves represented on the big screen.
There is local content being made and you know, some great local content being made with the streamers, but they're few and far between.
There's a long history of government support for the Australian film and television industry, tax breaks and production subsidies to encourage local production. It has helped create a booming industry that was supercharged during the pandemic when Australia, and particularly the Gold Coast, became the safe place to film major international blockbusters. But importantly, there have also been long-standing rules for free-to-air television that require them to produce a certain amount of local content, stories about Australia with Australian voices.
The opening of the National Television Service.
The local content debate has in fact gone on since the start of television, when the Menzies government in 1953 held a royal commission into whether Australia should even adopt television.
ABC Newsroom. The goat will not eat anything. It has to be provided with the best food.
Those arguing against a local content quota won, and an unregulated free market led to a situation in 1961 where just 1% of all drama on Australian television was Australian produced.
She's so fussy why'd she marry Joe?
And now, in an age when the mega power of the streaming giants like Netflix have produced an inexhaustible appetite for international productions, telling international stories, the question that people like Bryan Brown are posing is how to ensure Australian voices and Australian culture are not lost in the rush, having lived through a period when Australian stories first started to be told on film.
It was like you felt like you're on another planet. It was so thrilling. I mean, and not thrilling in the terms of like, oh, I'm tickled pink. It was sort of thrilling to think, wow, we have the opportunity and in a way, you know, a privilege to actually explore ourselves. It was really pretty bloody dynamic and wonderful.
Power plays involving media policy and the big media operators have long been a central drama of Canberra politics. The spectre of the big media proprietors, like Fairfax, Murdoch and Packer, made for plenty of drama.
I am nowhere near as rich as Rupert Murdoch, who runs the Mirror. Nowhere near it.
The decline of the dominance of print and the splintering of media markets perhaps explains why a current battle over media policy, this one over whether the streamers should be subjected to similar local content rules, hasn't seemed to receive quite so much attention.
Commercial television broadcasters are required to show 55% of everything they have on their main channel needs to be Australian, and there are sub-quotas that require us to show a certain amount of drama, documentaries, other Australian-produced programming.
Those who are fighting for a local content requirement for streaming platforms, like the one for free-to-air television, have strong allies in the government.
You pick up your remote control, put on the national broadcaster, there's Australian content guaranteed. Commercial TV, there's some Australian content guaranteed. Even Foxtel, you'll have some Australian content guaranteed. But the moment you flick over to a streaming service, there is no obligation that anything available be Australian.
But imposing local content obligation on streamers has its own issues.
You have to use different methods to what you use for free-to-air TV. Because free-to-air TV, for example, time is the issue. You can say you need this many hours. But how do you do that in a platform where the viewer is choosing what they watch? So internationally, the main way this has been done, and one of the models we're looking at, is where you effectively look at how much money is spent.
The government has already declared that whatever happens, Australia will have a local content rule for streaming platforms by July next year, though the legislation is still to pass the Parliament. For Arts Minister Tony Burke and Communications Minister Michelle Rowland, the question is not just about how to impose the obligation, but what it covers.
I think you start with where's the potential weakness? There's no weakness in terms of investment happening in reality TV. You don't need to regulate for that. There's no weakness in terms of how many Hollywood stories are being filmed in Australia. We're getting plenty of that. The big gap is for scripted drama.
Those opposing local content rules for streaming services argue more content rules will push costs up.
Australian Bureau of Statistics figures show that costs of production have increased by over 130% just in the last 5 years through natural competition alone. And of course that makes it harder for local broadcasters to meet their content obligations.
Tony Burke rejects the argument that a local content requirement would inflate production costs.
I don't buy that. We've got brilliant talent here. I just want to make sure we guarantee that some of that is guaranteed to be going to our own stories. We're here at the moment on the set of Total Control, but there's a familiarity that people watching them know that they're watching their own creativity, and that of itself is a good thing.
Australians now spend around $2 billion a year on streaming services. The question is whether that brings an obligation on those services to the local community.
What we're saying is that a percentage of that $2 billion should go back into being stories that are actually about Australia, that are Australian stories, not just stories that are set in Australia with, in the main, American accents. With that extra money that we can get from the streamers, allows us more time to develop, allows us more time to be able to shoot, therefore allows us to make our shows reach the great heights that we want them to be.